Good afternoon, everyone, and appreciate you being here again today. I have General Compton's also here with me today. He'll be here. Director Dixon is here, and Director Williams is here, and they'll all have an opportunity for you to come and ask questions today before we get that down. I'm thankful that last night was another peaceful night across Missouri. I also want to mention what I said yesterday. I just want to reiterate what Congressman Cleaver said, because, again, it stuck with me when I talked to him on the phone, that he was talking about in the days of Martin Luther King when they were protesting, the way they protested. And in that era, the way people done that of a daytime, and they made speeches, and they made it where people could cover it, where the media could cover it. They made speeches where they could do that. And as he said, not much was ever accomplished after the shadow of darkness. And I think that's a good message for all of us to go forward, again, to protect peaceful protest and to make sure people are safe. But we also have to separate bad activity from good activity. And I want to thank the Congressman for giving me a little inspiration of that being said. Now, let me also mention again, I mentioned yesterday there was a question about the National Guard going to D.C. The General will be here too. He can talk more about it, so I want everybody to make sure you know those are two different functions of the National Guard. When they're called up from Washington, that is a federal request that will be that, so it will be funded by the federal level. It will not be to the taxpayers of Missouri per se for Missouri. So it's no expense out of our general revenue for them to go to Washington, D.C. I want to make sure that's clear during the times of the budget situation we're in. We also, today I traveled to Kansas City to meet with community leaders in Kansas City, much like we did in St. Louis the other day, and local officials. We were at the Truman Medical Drive-In through testing for COVID-19, which was very active. A lot of people were there. Tests were being done as we were on the ground there. And then we also went to the Morning Star Baptist Church. We met with a lot of community leaders there. Law enforcement was there. Protesters, or people that was actually protesters, were there. Some of the ones that were there that caught attention was some of the younger ones that were there. I spoke to a young man, probably 25, I believe he was, clergy, and he was one of the organizers for the protest. He was there. So it was good to have an opportunity with him to look at it from that younger generation, what they were seeing and what they were their concerns was, and to have a discussion about, to make sure we're all on the same page trying to promote peaceful protest. I think that's important to realize, and what I asked of them was the protesters, like I did in St. Louis, that there's a time when the protest is over to try to finish up and go home. Because the people that are going to stay afterwards that's going to cause the destruction and cause the chaos are the people we don't want to be there. We don't want good people mixed in with that group there. I think as you go by and you see what's happened this week, as I evaluate it, it's disheartening, some of the things that occur and besides a peaceful protest. When you look at the retired police officer that you've all covered in the media, lost his life, a retired police officer, starting with a gentleman in Minnesota. He should have never died the way he died, and it wasn't right. But it wasn't right for that retired police officer in St. Louis to die the other night either. It wasn't right for the photographer to lose his life in Kansas City after a protest while he's picking up his children to be able to do that. That's not right. It's not right for 4 police officers to get shot in the line of duty during the cover of a protest. Those two need to be separated. I've asked the clergy, I've asked the civic leaders, everybody I can talk to make sure they identify the true difference between those two. The other thing I will mention too, that a lot of them wanted me to make sure and mention in my briefing, was that COVID-19 is still out there. That virus is still out there. They're still concerned about that. And as the attention has kind of went to the protest side of it, there's not a whole lot being said about that many protesters being together and about the virus, as we well know. And they're concerned about that, especially in the African-American community, that we're still getting that message out. So they asked me to do that. Both St. Louis and Kansas City was brought up both times, so I want to make sure and do that. As I said yesterday, we will continue to receive good news on the COVID-19 front. We have now had no new outbreaks reported in long-term care facilities for 2 days. Our box-in testing team continues to go above and beyond their daily testing goals. This is truly life-saving work, and we're very appreciative of their efforts to protect some of Missouri's most at-risk citizens. This morning, we shipped over 1,400 vials of remdesivir to hospitals throughout Missouri. Hospitalizations are down, and we have over 2,000 ventilators available, and our positive rate continues to decline in the state of Missouri. Again, this is all very positive news, and we continue to be hopeful for the future. Between civil unrest, COVID-19, budget issues, and the economy, there is a lot going on across the state of Missouri right now. It has been a little over a month since I announced our Show Me Strong recovery plan. While we still have a ways to go, we are making progress. Businesses are reopening, and more Missourians are going back to work. Initial unemployment claims have dropped from over 100,000 in late March to around 20,000 last week. And even in the midst of COVID-19, companies are still investing and expanding in our state. We're glad to see Missourians safely re-engaging in the economy, and we are thankful for the businesses across the state that have stepped up and implemented new measures to keep employees and customers safe. Missouri citizens and businesses are eager to get the economy going again, now more than ever. They need our support to get back on their feet. Director Dixon and the Department of Economic Development have worked very hard to create a plan that drives economic and community recovery across Missouri. This plan focuses on four main areas: business, community, citizens, and infrastructure. As far as communities, Federal CARES Act funding is becoming available to communities across the state. There are a lot of needs competing for those funds, but I want to challenge our community leaders to think about how we can use these funds strategically, not just to help Missourians recover in the short term, but how we can come out of this crisis stronger than before. As a state, we need to take this opportunity to invest in programs that support strong testing and contact tracing efforts to help communities respond to COVID-19, train Missourians for high-paying, resilient jobs, close gaps in our broadband infrastructure, and improve access to health care and online learning, fund hospital systems in areas that lack access to health care, and strengthen financial assistance programs for Main Street businesses and make our communities such great places to live and work. The COVID-19 crisis has shown how critical these needs really are. So today, we are issuing a new set of recommendations to help communities across the state as they build their own plans for using CARES Act funding. Director Dixon is here to share more about these recommendations and the state's economy recovery plan. So, Director Dixon, please come forward.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. Hi, I'm Rob Dixon, Director of the Missouri Department of Economic Development. As the Governor has talked about, our state's public health response and our economic recovery are really two sides of the same coin, and we need success in both areas for our state to prosper. For both of these areas, Governor Parson has tasked every single state agency to work together to help our citizens, our communities, and our businesses. And I can report that we are doing just that. Teams across the entire administration are looking at ways that we can eliminate barriers for businesses to get Missourians back to work, to help our communities struggling with the cascading economic impacts, and to help improve our state's infrastructure to help spur economic growth and job growth. And we also certainly want to help our citizens struggling with many other challenges, and we've begun work in all of these areas. I wanted to give a brief update on some of the federal assistance that we've been able to help our state businesses access. For example, the Paycheck Protection Program. More than 86,000 Missouri businesses have accessed these PPP loans, which help keep employees on the payroll totaling over $9 billion in assistance for Missouri employers. More than 8,200 Missouri businesses were approved for more than $619 million in small business economic injury loans, and more than 44,000 businesses have received a total of more than $145 million in loan advances, most of which do not need to be repaid to the U.S. Small Business Administration. As the governor just outlined on some thoughts on how local governments and communities can be innovative in the use of some of their CARES Act funding, we certainly want to encourage those communities to support additional testing, contact tracing, and other efforts in their communities to respond to COVID-19. But as the governor outlined, there's also additional opportunities for training Missourians for high-paying and resilient jobs on infrastructure like broadband and telehealth and other things along those lines. We can certainly strengthen our financial assistance programs for Main Street businesses to help make our communities vibrant. And there are many, many ways that local governments can utilize these funds. Our team at the Department of Economic Development is happy to provide additional details and technical assistance to these communities. And as the governor mentioned, there will be some additional information coming forward on that. I also want to note the hard work of other agencies that are working right now to help get Missourians trained for those high-paying, resilient jobs. Specifically, the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development is a key leader in this area, and they've announced recently their Return Strong campaign, which is helping Missourians invest in the future through things like training vouchers and the critical work at our state's job centers. I wanted to note specifically the work of our teams working with the Community Development Block Grant funding. Recently, we have awarded nearly $1 million just in a couple of projects to help improve communities' infrastructure, as well as a variety of other community development and opportunities like that. We've invested in Leeton, in Clarkton, in Cape Girardeau, in Granlin, and Craig. And all of these will directly assist our communities to help make them and our state stronger for the long term. Finally, I wanted to share just a little bit about the work that's been going on to help the private sector and the employers and business community of our state as it relates to COVID-19 testing. Over the last several weeks, we've been reaching out to businesses in every region of the state to offer assistance and to help learn about how we can provide additional help for their customers and their workers. Many businesses have rapidly expanded and shifted to telework, and others have incorporated new screening and testing procedures. I want to applaud those businesses who have taken responsible precautions to offer testing for their employees. As communities and as a state, we should continue to encourage these employers because they're helping to keep all of us safe through their efforts. Unfortunately, in some cases, there have been employers and their employees who have been singled out with a stigma because of positive tests or the fact that they're doing testing, and some even think that that testing itself brings a stigma with it. We know that finding those positive cases and how they're connected helps to protect the entire community in our state. So I want to thank those employers who are taking proactive measures to test, and it's employers like these that will help lead recovery and make us more resilient as a state. We have a long road ahead, but as the governor has outlined, the Show Me Strong recovery plan does provide a path forward. We're on the right path in that regard, and we are laser focused on helping our state's businesses, communities, and citizens. Thank you.
Rob, thank you very much. I'm now going to ask General Compton to come up, and if you got any questions on the Guard of how that works, I'll let him answer those questions for you. If you have any on the expenses of it or what their involvement is and how many boots they got on the ground, I'm going to let him come and give a briefing on that. Kelly, when he gets done, why don't we open it up for questions? We'll let both directors also come up there if there's questions for them, and then I'll come up and finish up. All right? General Compton.
Hey, thank you, Governor. Always appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on the Missouri National Guard's response efforts, this time in response to and what we're doing for public safety, as well as our COVID-19 efforts across Missouri. We currently have 1,000 Missouri National Guard soldiers and airmen mobilized across the state. We're working with the Missouri State Highway Patrol and local police departments to ensure the safety of our citizens and to protect critical infrastructure. We greatly appreciate the collaboration and spirit of teamwork underway with the Missouri Highway Patrol, local police departments across our state, and just as importantly, our community leaders to support nonviolent demonstrations. We're also sending more than 300 soldiers to Washington, D.C. to supplement the D.C. National Guard in their efforts to assist civil authorities. This effort is known as mutual aid, paid for by the requesting agency, and is a common practice across our National Guard. Hey, let me take a moment and talk about what I talked to you all a few weeks ago. This civil unrest mission is one of the most challenging missions we do. Our priority is the safety and well-being of our Missouri citizens because we have a vested interest in our communities. I want to remind everyone that our Guard members are citizen soldiers and airmen who live and work in our communities across Missouri. And like I said a few weeks ago, our Guard is in fact you. We are the high school teachers, the accountants, the clergy, the farmers, the moms, the dads, the college students. We are Missouri citizens that care deeply for each other. So when you see a Guardsman, please know that we care about you, we care about each other, and we care about our collective freedom to demonstrate peacefully, and we care about protecting life and property. In addition to our support to state and local partners during this time, as I've talked to many times, we have also more than 1,000 soldiers and airmen supporting the governor's Show Me Strong recovery plan. Our service members are working closely with Dr. Williams and DHSS and many other partners to continue our efforts across Missouri. Last week, we supported community-based testing sites in Independence, St. Charles, Dardine Prairie, and this week we are assisting testing efforts in Columbia, Springfield, House Springs, Hillsboro, and Cape Girardeau. Next week, we plan to be in Sikeston, Platte City, Dexter, Van Buren, Doniphan, and Peculiar. And what the Guard's doing is serving many roles, but again, it's in close coordination with DHS, Department of Health and Senior Services, the local health authorities, and we couldn't do this without that collective spirit. But the Guard is assisting in site setup, traffic control, data entry, and sample collection. We supported sentinel testing at correctional facilities in Algoa and Chillicothe this week, and in Licking and Charleston last week. Additionally, Guard members are providing administrative data entry and call center support at 3 locations across the state. We continue to assist food banks across Missouri and provide support to many other agencies in support of COVID-19 response efforts and as part of the Show Me Strong recovery plan. Hey, again, this response has truly been a team effort. I'm confident that I speak for the entire Missouri National Guard when I say, hey, we're proud to be part of it. We're proud to be part of this dedicated team. Our state and local partners are consummate professionals. And I want to especially thank again our Highway Patrol, our local law enforcement, our clergy, and our community leaders across the state. Together we are accomplishing more than we ever imagined. We're getting through this because we are strong Missourians. We're getting through this together. And Governor Parson, again, I appreciate your leadership in calling on the Missouri Guard to assist in taking care of each other as one team. Show me strong. Thank you, and I'll take any questions, please.
Any questions for General Philip?
Hi, General.
Hi.
So just to be clear, there's more than 1,000 troops mobilized for the civil unrest mission, more than 1,000 for the Show Me Strong recovery plan, and then with the 300 going to D.C., that's about 2,300 mobilized altogether?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
General, with the 300 members going to D.C., I'm not quite sure how mutual aid works. Who is the requesting agency, and which agency will be paying for the costs?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Crystal, in this case, the requesting agency is the DC National Guard, and they are the payer. That they provide the funds and or federal funds to support the cost. It is not a state bill.
Okay. And then for the Missouri National Guard members that go to DC, will it show that they're from Missouri the whole time? Because there have been military type guards in DC who have been deployed and they aren't wearing any insignia to show which department or agency they're representing?
If I understand the question, we don't wear Missouri on our uniform, right? We wear United States Army. We're all part of the Army, and so when our guardsmen, whether you're a Missouri guardsman, a D.C. guardsman, a New York guardsman, and there's multiple other states supporting the D.C. Guard through this effort. But no, that you'll see service members there, and you'll see U.S. Army on their chest.
Okay.
Hi.
Thank you.
Do you have an idea of when those 300 will be going to DC?
Today.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And I know you kind of mentioned this, but what exactly will they be doing there in DC? Like, what's their mission there?
Yeah, it's predominantly to do critical infrastructure protection in support of local law enforcement.
Oh, sorry, I have another question, sorry. And then, so here in Missouri, with the response, how many different cities are Guard troops in right now in relation to the civil unrest?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a number of them, so I won't be able to name them by name, but we've been supporting St. Louis City, St. Louis County the last few days, as well as Kansas City and the surrounding area. We've been in Jefferson City and Columbia, and then a number of smaller cities within those larger communities.
And I just have one more question. Do you have any idea when the orders will end for Guard troops to stop helping police with the civil unrest?
Well, we'll be in it until we're no longer needed. And as I mentioned, we'd like it for it to end soon, but we're going to stay with the effort as long as necessary, and appreciate everybody's support and getting back to a very peaceful time here in the state of Missouri.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions for Director Dixon? All right.
Thank you.
Dr. Williams?
I just want to add to the general, from a public health perspective, I cannot thank the National Guard enough. They are truly a force multiplier. And there are lots of ways, our motto is to protect health and keep people safe, but there are lots of ways to do that. But their work, so many of them, when I talk to them, they're just unfailingly polite. They are completely committed. They are incredibly enthusiastic. They're very versatile. Testing is probably not the thing they thought of when they joined the Guard, but I just can't thank all of those individuals enough that I've worked with in the Guard, and thank the General for their professionalism. They're just superb, so thank you.
Hi, Dr. Williams. So a person in Boone County with COVID-19 unfortunately passed away yesterday, but they were hospitalized for a different reason, and that is being considered a COVID-19 death. Is there any chance that that person would be removed from the total if they don't put COVID-19 on the death certificate?
We talked about that this morning, and my understanding is our epidemiological people looked into that and thought that that should be a COVID-19 associated death. There's a good article I can refer you to in the New England Journal about that whole issue of just because you have COVID-19 wouldn't necessarily mean that death is attributed to that. So I've had the question asked me, well, who makes that distinction? And the answer, first off, is the medical examiner. They sign off if there's an autopsy or there's any question. And then the second is the provider who's taking care of that patient. They would attribute that. And then the third is our epidemiological team. So thank you for the question. It can get a little confusing, but that's how that process works.
Dr. Williams, today the state saw almost 300 new cases of COVID-19. Is that a result of the state's increased push on testing?
Yeah, another great question. And so that's partly due to it. But, the reason we're doing all this testing, as the governor said, almost 12,000 last Monday, is to look for hot spots. So that data came off at 2 o'clock. I got a briefing on it at about 2:30. And the first thing we noticed is that there's an increase in the Kansas City area. And I was communicating with Rex Archer this morning So we know they've had some facilities there across the line. So the first thing we do is we just don't assume that that's due to the increased testing. It may well be, because we're doing 4 times the amount, or 2.5 times the amount of testing we've been doing in some cases. But the first thing we'll do is to be asking questions tonight about Kansas City and talk to Rex and just kind of break that down as to, is there anything there we need to be more vigilant about, or awareness. And that's the whole purpose, is to identify areas early so we can get a look at it. Thank you.
All right. Questions?
Governor, there's a bill on your desk right now that would lengthen sentences for certain felonies like armed criminal action. And there was a broad coalition this week that was asking you to veto the bill. In general, do you support the idea of lengthening sentences for felonies? And do you think that, if you do you think that negates some of the work you did last year on criminal justice reform?
First of all, it's not laying on my desk. It may be in the office being reviewed, but I don't have that yet. We haven't reviewed that yet in my office on that particular bill on that. So until they get that review done, until they make a recommendation.
General opinion, though, on lengthening sentences?
You know, I've said this all along. Until I review the bill, until we get a look at general counsel, take a look at it, and goes through our review process, I'm just not going to say yes, I would, or no, I wouldn't, until I figure out what all else is in that bill. I don't know. We did a lot of work on criminal justice reform, and we're going to continue to do that on that. Let me say one other thing. Crystal will use it, the microphone. Something I want to clarify. The other night at a protest out here, you on social media went out there and actually made fun of people on the front line, the conservation agents that were out there working on the front line the other night, saying you was with a group of people that were saying they should be doing other things. I want you to know that kind of stuff's uncalled for, especially for people out there that's working, trying to protect one another. So I just want you to know
that. I was quoting the protesters, sir.
Yeah, you wasn't quoting the protesters. You know what you're doing, so do I. Next question.
Hi. As we get closer to the next phase of reopening, do you have a preview or any goals that you're hoping to see with that phase?
Yeah, we hope every day things are getting better, and that we'll be able to expand that more as we go. But again, I want to be very cautiously how we do this and make sure. We got some areas out there we still got to keep a good look at. A lot of things going on right now in the state of Missouri with what's happening after a holiday weekend without protesters. You know, we're just going to keep moving forward. But as soon as we can kind of get on the same page across the state, which I think we're getting pretty close to that, at some point we're going to open the state up. We're going to open it up with guidelines and recommendations how we're going to do that. So, and then at some point the people's got to take that upon their own shoulders, and government's not going to be able to tell you what to do every day.
Governor Parson, there has been talks in Kansas City about things that the police board can do to address some of the protesters' ideas about what they want to see to combat police brutality, systemic racism. So there has been one idea out there about returning the Kansas City Police Department to local control because the state controls it. Do you have an opinion about that?
It takes a legislative action to do that. You know, right now, the main thing we ought to all be focused on is making sure we're having peaceful protests and law enforcement are doing their job. That's not going to change because it takes legislative action, so nothing's going to happen that into the immediate future.
Hi, Governor. I know you haven't talked specific policies with the activists you've spoken with, but what's your sense, especially from the younger activists, of just what their sense of the role of government is in all this?
Yeah, you know what? I think we really got to work harder at that. I think I got to work harder at that, the governor. I think elected officials have got to work harder at that. Community leaders have got to work harder at that. Bringing that younger generation, I want to say, into the table and to really understand what their concerns are and why they're there. I think one of the things I learned in St. Louis, Kansas City, both, there was some young men there, probably mid-20s, I would say, early 20s, that want to be heard. They want somebody to sit down with them, and they want somebody to have that opportunity to sit down and say what their concerns are. And I can tell you today, as I did in St. Louis, I've committed to that and going to try to make it a point to sit down with them and whatever resources I can. But right now they want to be heard, and there's no reason we can't make that happen.
Governor.
Thank you, Chris. You've had any questions today. Thank you very much all for being here. Appreciate it.
Let me just finish up here and just want to say one thing to everybody. You know, when people kind of work together like we have the last 2 days, things have went pretty well in our state. They really have. But I think that was a combination of effort of the protesters, the peaceful protesters, working together, realizing that things did get a little out of control under the umbrella of a protest. You know, everybody's tired right now. Everybody's exhausted, to be right honest about it. As I went through today, especially some of the police forces that I went and seen in St. Louis and Kansas City, everybody's been at it now for almost a solid week. And there is no backup police force. There is no backup to take those officers' place. They still got to maintain all the things that they do in their cities, as well as their counties and their other activities they got to do. If there was ever a time for the protesters and law enforcement to be on the same page to make sure, one, you do your protest once you make your points, but also both of them should be ensuring that people are safe when they leave there. We don't need innocent people getting killed anymore, and I think that's something important. So I want to tell everybody, I won't be here tomorrow. We'll be on the road tomorrow. I'm actually going to be in Springfield. I think it's some mobile testing sites that we'll be at tomorrow, again, promoting that. Everything you can do from the media's point of view of promoting the testing for the people that want to be tested, I would appreciate that. It's still, that virus is still out there, and we still got to work on it. And I just want to make sure everybody understands, be safe. Go home this weekend, really think about what we're doing as Missourians, think how we can come together and we can find solutions to problems and continue to work hard. Again, I just make a difference by working together, listening to one another, and peacefully pushing change and going forward. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and God bless.